everyone. And hello, Kathy in the chat. She said that she read the audiobook and learned a lot. So that's great. We have people listening and watching. And so let's start by all introducing ourselves. I'm going to start with our author, Kate Moore.
Hello, I'm Kate Moore. I'm the author of The Radium Girls and other books such as The Woman They Could Not Silence. And I'm really thrilled that you have chosen to read my book and wanted to ask me some questions about it. So thank you so much for having me on and for joining us today to talk about these amazing women.
Yes, and we did another video, Kate and I together, about The Woman They Could Not Silence. So if anyone hasn't seen that after this, go watch that one. That was a really good book.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I'll just go in order of how I see you. Meredith, tell us about yourself.
I'm Meredith Armistead, and I am an online teacher and an in-person teacher. And I do not have a YouTube channel, but I am friends with all of you and follow you guys. And I did watch the other video that you guys did, and I'm going to go get that book next. So, and I'm super excited to be here. I loved the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reading it.
Mary?
Yes, my name is Mary Maple, and I live in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I used to be an online teacher, so that's how I know all these wonderful ladies here. No longer teach online, but I'm doing something very different, like being a pampered chef consultant and sharing my love for cooking and leading a team. So that's what I do now. But I used to be a counselor, a marriage and family counselor, and connecting with women's stories and stories of empowerment and healing are part of what I really feel drawn to. So reading or listening to your story was really powerful. I really appreciate everything that you did to bring that story to light. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Cindy?
Yes, my name's Cindy Bennett, and I do have a YouTube channel right now. It's kind of a mishmash of things, but I'll be putting some videos about more math teaching skills. And I also am a library trustee. I just became one this year. And so I also have some book reports on my channel. And I think Kelly and I kind of connected because we both like books. And I watched your video about The Woman That Could Not Be Silenced. So I had to go right out and get that book. And I absolutely loved that interview. And I thank you so much for agreeing to that interview. And that book spoke to me in so many ways. Like, it just gave me strength, you know. It was so good. And then The Radium Girls, I started it before Christmas, and it was so sad at the beginning. I couldn't do it until after Christmas. So I was okay with it. But yeah, my heart went out to all of those ladies, and it was good to know that what they went through could be brought out for good, you know, and to see the attitudes and how they persevered. And I did watch the movie after I read the book, and the movie was not as good as the book.
The movie is actually fixed. It's one of those weird things where I was working on the book at the same time as they were doing the movie, so they're completely separate projects. They're not at all related to each other. And if you actually look at I haven't seen the movie, but if you look at the cast list, it's not about Grace Fryer and Catherine Donahue. They've invented characters and have told, inspired by a true story kind of thing, but it's not actually the real story that's told in the book.
Oh, okay, good to know.
The only thing I liked about the movie was the woman that she had to have her arm cut off. I can't remember what her name was. They did picture her as having a really good attitude and really smiling, even though she'd been through all of this trauma.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
I guess in real life, Charlotte Purcell did the same. She just got on with having 3 kids and having one arm, and made it work. That's what her granddaughter remembered her with, the sort of clothes pegs in her mouth, hanging out laundry just with one arm,
Well, it really seems like the women portrayed, or not portrayed, but the women in the book, they seem to mostly have good attitudes, or what you put in the book for them. I'm sure they had their moments where it was
of course. I mean, I do write in the book about Catherine Sharp in particular, who is one of the New Jersey women who, you know, is hospitalized for her mental health at one point. And the company try and use that against her once they go to trial. They're sort of saying she's of a nervous disposition and, you know, trying to cast doubt on the accuracy and authenticity of her experiences, you know, sort of to say, oh, no, she's crazy, she can't be trusted, you know, harking back to Women They Could Not Silence, which is about how the patriarchy can use mental illness to try and undermine women. You know, that is exactly what happened to Catherine Sharp, you know, in the 1920s.
Right, not thinking that what happened to her could have made her that way.
Exactly. How would you feel, you know, seeing your friends who were young, who were the same age as you, who literally sat next to you, you know, in that studio? How would you feel to see them sickening and dying and think that you're next? You know, how would you cope with that reality? You know, as I think I wrote in the book, you know, the surprising thing is that more Radium Girls didn't, you know, end up completely devastated from a mental perspective. And, you know, it's truly remarkable how many of them did actually manage to fight those demons and come out on top.
And they didn't necessarily leave the positions because it was so glamorous and the money was good, and, you know, they glowed when they went out on the town.
During a time when women didn't have many options for jobs and it paid really well.
But then knowing what might happen, and they stayed.
I mean, they didn't really know what would happen at the time when it's all glamorous and lovely. They, you know, they think it's safe. They're told it's safe. And even when people are starting to sicken, the company is still reassuring them that they're safe. So it's, you know, kind of hard to leave a well-paying job if you're told there's no danger and it's not that that's making you sick.
Right. And it was when people were a lot of financial troubles too. Yes. Yeah. So Mary, you came up with a lot of the questions. So why don't you start? Go ahead, ask her.
Yeah. So one of the things that I just wanted to start with was what first drew you to the story? Like, how did this story come to light for you? And why did it seem important to you to dedicate that time to bringing it to the public? Because it's such a powerful story.
It is. And I have to sort of go a bit back in my life before the book was conceived to answer this question, because I first discovered the story of the Radium Girls through directing a play about them. And I found the play about them literally sitting on my sofa in London, Googling great plays for women, because I was looking for the next play I wanted to direct. And so I Googled great plays for women. A play called These Shining Lives by Melanie Marnich came back on that Google search, which is about the Ottawa, Illinois dial painters. Fell in love with the script, hadn't even read the whole script, read literally just the opening monologue, and I turned to my husband and I said, this is the play I'm going to direct next. My connection to the story was that immediate. So I got permission to put the play on and immediately started doing research, because I knew it was a play based on a true story. I knew the characters we were portraying were real. I wanted, you know, my actors and I to do justice to that. And so I read everything that I could find on the women, because we were doing a lot of improvisation, backstory work, you know, figuring out who these women were, what their lives were like. And I couldn't find the sort of intimate details about what were their weddings like, how many siblings did they have, you know, all of the sort of personal details that help bring people to life. And by this point, I was completely in love with these women, thought they were incredible, was shocked that there wasn't a book that sort of told their personal stories and gave that personal information that I was so fascinated by. And so it was in the middle of doing rehearsals for the play that I thought, I think there needs to be a book. And if no one else has done it, why don't I do it? You know, it's that classic thing of write the book you want to read. And that's how the book of the Radium Girls came to be.
How long did you spend on your research?
I did it what I now know to be relatively quickly, because I was super naive. I'd never written a history book before. I'd written and ghostwritten books before, but we're sort of talking, you know, gift books, sort of ghostwriting other people's memoirs, very, very different in terms of the amount of research that you need to do. And So I think I pitched the book maybe about February of 2015, it would have been, when we were rehearsing. I went away and did research in America, spent a month in America traveling around, gathering material, realized there was just such an enormous treasure trove of material, as you know from the book, you know, trial transcripts, medical records, you know, court testimonies, you know, just everything. It's just a mass of data. Right. So I spoke to my publisher and said, you know, that date that I said, there's no way I can make that, you know, can I get an extension? And she did say yes, but she was like, I can only give you a couple more months. Wow. So I delivered the book at the end of January 2016. So from me first writing the proposal was basically a year, but within that year I was writing, I think, 2 or 3 other books and researching, and, you know, so it was super quick and hectic, and I was working 7 days a week and you know, 22-hour days sometimes, just completely immersed in the story. But in some ways I think that really informed how the book was created and the way I felt about it and felt about the women, because it was just me and them, you know, like I didn't do anything else. I didn't eat, barely saw my husband. He did all the cooking, all the cleaning. And, you know, it was just so intense, but fabulous at the same time.
And did you find that it was easy to find the stuff that you needed to research, or was there a lot of buried material that you had to get like permission to have access to?
It was a bit of both, I would say. I was really helped by the fact that there were 2 academic books on the same topic. Okay. One of the authors had passed away. The other author, Dr. Ross Molnar, was alive and was very gracious in granting me an interview. Both of their books had fantastic bibliographies. So that meant that I knew from those books that there was a treasure trove of material at the Library of Congress. So when I planned my research trip in America, I knew that I had to get to Washington and spend, you know, 4 or 5 days there going through the Raymond Berry papers. So their books were helpful to give me leads to say, okay, I need to contact this library, I need to go to that museum. But there were also serendipitous discoveries. You know, you heard things on the grapevine, check this out, have you spoken to this person? And they led to, you know, undiscovered gems. I think the most sort of spine-tingling moment of which was when I was in Illinois and someone had pointed me towards this tiny museum in Utica, and they said they might have some Radium Girls stuff. So I went in and said, I'm researching a book on them, you know, please can I see your archive? And the docent looked really confused and sort of scratched her head and said, well, I'll happily show you what we have, but I don't know how helpful you'll find it. And she took me over to a display cabinet, and there was a single photograph of the girls at work and one of the academic books, and that was it. And I said, oh, you know, you sure you don't have anything else? And she's like, I don't think so, but, you know, we checked with the manager, and he said, oh, there might be something in the back office, you know, feel free to take a look. So I went in the back office and lifted this dusty folder off the shelf and started going through it. And it hadn't been looked at, I don't think, for years. And in it was handwritten original correspondence between Catherine Donoghue and Pearl Payne.
Oh,
wow. It was incredible. Yeah. Totally spine tingling. And
I know, I got chills.
Yeah, I think it felt even more special for me because I had come to the story through a play, and I directed actors to play those 2 women. And then, you know, here I was sitting holding the paper that they had touched. You know, it literally was just in the folder, so I could literally trace the indentation Catherine had made with her pencil. You know, it was so immediate and just incredibly powerful. And, you know, those letters had never been quoted anywhere else. No one had ever used them in the story of the Radium Girls. So it was really special to find those, you know, particularly because they were first person letters, you know, telling us what they were really thinking and feeling, you know, an authentic, open, honest communication between 2 friends. You know, that was just so special.
That's incredible.
That's great. Actually, Meredith brought the actual book with her. The rest of us listened to the audio version. So she has all the pictures. So now we all.
I was showing them some of the pictures
Yeah.
before you arrived, but I did have one question since you were talking about research. Did you happen to speak to any of the relatives of the men who were in charge of the company? And because the book talked about, they would always say, it's fine, it's not going to hurt you, all of that. Did you talk to any of their family, or did they have any stories from,
No,
or was
no,
it just kind of pushed under the rug with?
I didn't speak to them at all. Part of that was because I wasn't interested in them. I was interested in the Radium Girls.
Yes.
And partly it was because of time, because as I say, I literally had I had the time to do what I did and no more.
Right.
And yeah, as I say, for me, the story was not about them. It was
Right.
about the women. And who knows, the women's families were all incredibly generous. They wanted the story to be told. They happily, shared their stories with me. I don't know how someone would feel to have a writer, contact them out of the blue and say, by the way, you're
curious
grandfather.
if they had heard stories over the years, or if they just always swept it under the rug.
I didn't go down that path, so I don't know.
Okay.
So when you talked to the families, there's that sense of like there's private stories and then there's what can you bring to light. And how did you balance that to want to remain authentic to the story, but realizing there's certain things that may not want to be publicized? So how do you balance that as an author?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I don't think it's one that anyone has asked me before. What I would say is this was obviously a very personal tragedy that they were going through in terms of the fact that, how it was affecting them physically, the fact that their fatal diagnoses were playing out, in, full spotlight of the public stage, across newspapers, across court trials and so on. So I think the sort of the private public balance it wasn't really a quandary that I had, because so much was already in the public domain. They were already talking about how they felt, how it was impacting the relationship with their children, how the community was shunning them. All of that was in the public domain. Thinking about it now, as I say, being sort of almost put on the spot to think about the question, I do obviously share very detailed medical details in the book, some of which was available in court records, but wouldn't necessarily have, people won't necessarily know it if I hadn't put it in the book. But what I will say is that I felt very much like the fact of what they had gone through medically was the truth of their story. And a couple of other things that I read on the Radium Girls sometimes obfuscated the reality of what they went through. For example, I'm thinking in particular of Irene Laporte, who had a gynecological tumour. And in some of the other stuff I've read, it talks about it affecting her stomach. Well, it wasn't her stomach. It was, she was trying to have sex with her husband and she couldn't because of the obstruction of the tumour. And for me, it was really important not to try and obfuscate, but to say this is actually the reality of what they went through as women.
Yes.
And as I say, I think for me, I was sort of very much about wanting to make the reader understand what these women had gone through. And so I shared those details because I thought it was important to present the unvarnished truth and not to try and look away from it or whitewash it, because the women couldn't look away from it or whitewash it. They had to live the reality. And so I shared the reality in the book in all its detail.
Yeah, I like that. I like, I want to know the true story.
Mm-hmm. And the pictures in the book just really, it brings it to life, because you can put a name to a face,
Meredith, you should show some of them. I'm going to see if I could make you bigger here on StreamYard, but
this is the, can you see those?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
There's let's see.
so powerful to see the pictures, which I missed listening to the story. So I have to go get the book now.
Yeah, I
also just so you know, I listened to the audio, The Woman Who Could Not Be Silenced, and so some of us kind of wish that we had heard Kate Moore doing the I don't know,
the Radium Girls? Yeah, I did the UK version actually. So I did the UK version of the Radium Girls audiobook, and then I did all the versions of The Woman They Could Not Silence, but they got an American reader to do the American edition of the Radium Girls. So I think my version is available, but I don't know how easy it is to buy in the US. I don't know if that's possible. I do know someone who's got it, but I don't know if they got the CDs rather than the download. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
we would have preferred to hear your voice.
Yes, Cindy and I, like, we liked your voice in the other one, The Woman They Could Not. So yes, if anyone's watching this and hasn't, see if you can get the UK version.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I wished, at the time it was all happening. I was like, was one of those things, you don't have the confidence or authority to sort of say, is there any chance you could use mine? Because I'd already recorded mine. They sort of say, who did you want to read it? And I didn't feel I could say, can you not use mine? I think I just felt, I'm British and I've got my English accent. People would prefer to have an American read the story.
No, we like your voice.
I think it's fascinating that you're a British person, but you were interested in telling a story, that happened here.
As I say, the journey with the Radium Girls was just so serendipitous, as I say, from that Google search to, it leading me on this incredible journey where I'm like flying 4,000 miles across an ocean to, walk around these like small towns of America. And, it's just incredible. It was just something about the story that I just connected with. And then it's, led me on to these, life-changing adventures and experiences. And I am so grateful to the Radium Girls. They have given me so much. And I only hope that I have, done them justice in their story, and that I
think you have.
I've given them in return, hopefully the memory that people are remembering them. The fact we're all talking about them this afternoon is, so special to me, because, that's what it was all about. It was about remembering them and remembering their personal journeys. So it just means so much to me that we're doing this afternoon, and that you all have read the book. So thank you.
It's such an honor to talk to you.
Yeah, I am so awestruck right now.
I know, me too.
This is going to be a memory I'll always have. So thank you so much for agreeing to this conversation.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
It was a wonderful book. It's the story is very heartbreaking, and you feel for these women, but you did a wonderful job with writing their story. And you just really felt like you were their friend. You were there with them.
That's how I felt about it.
Going through it with them.
Yeah. That's how I felt about it too.
So this story is historic. But as you look at this story, what message do you think it carries for us in this time with the social issues that are current? Like, what would you want us to take forward and say, okay, this is how we can apply it in our lives now?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think there are so many lessons and messages, and it's a heartbreaking story in itself of what happens to the Radium Girls, but it's also heartbreaking because it is so timeless. In particular, I think, big business, powerful corporations or governments, not being held to account, thinking they can get away with something on a sort of smaller level scale, people telling you something is safe when it's not, or they haven't done the research. I literally this week, I retweeted an article from the BBC about Parkinson's and fertilizer. There's, various studies going on right now, and the company have been saying, our fertilizer doesn't cause Parkinson's. But then it turned out they've been, twisting the data, not looking at all the medical records, deliberately excluding people that have been diagnosed but have not died of Parkinson's. just the sort of thing that the radium companies were doing, you know, back in the 1920s.
What kind of are you writing a book on that, or are you just researching?
No, I just saw it online and just retweeted it. So I just thought it, you know, the parallels were striking.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
no,
and
I
Go
wouldn't
ahead.
want to write the same story again, if you know what I mean. So I'm always
Yeah.
looking to do something different rather than retell the same story through different people's lives.
Right.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah.
you do that in the other book, The Woman They Could Not Silence. At the very end, you tie it into current events and what's going on now that related to this story. So those of you who haven't read her other book, she does do that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's kind of, again, heartbreaking, but also so interesting about history, is that, you know, people are people, and what people went through in the 1920s or the 1860s or earlier, you know, the sort of key issues at heart, you know, and issues like greed or betrayal, you know, murder, you know, deceit, all those things are still happening today, and they were happening then. And therefore I think you can, as I try to do when I'm writing, you know, you can reach back through history and grab a story like almost by the throat and pull it into the modern day, because the issues are the same. So even though you're relating a historical story, it should feel immediate, because we understand those emotions and those experiences, because we can still see them happening all around us today, you know. And I think the lesson that you take from stories like the Radium Girls is, how did they fight that, and how can we be inspired by their strength and courage and their pluck and their dignity and their perseverance and resilience. You know, fighting for justice takes a long time, and you are up against so many obstacles, that to sort of read about these women who, you know, against all the odds managed to triumph, who suffered so much, and yet, you know, you can look back at them and say you made a difference in the world.
Yeah,
that's really special, and that, I think, is the story I want people to take away, that story of their strength. And, you know, I hope people reading it will fall in love with them and mourn for them, but that they will also think about how they can apply those lessons in their own life. And as I do, you know, I think, what would the Radium Girls do, or, you know, how would they cope, comparing my situation to theirs and thinking, you know, I can do this. If they can do that, I can do this. You know, so I hope people are inspired by them if they read the book.
That's really powerful. And when I think of, you know, my own personal journey, being an abuse survivor and then going on to being a counselor and helping people through their personal journey of healing, it's the same thing, whether it's a corporation trying to silence or if it's a family trying to silence you, having that courage and that resilience to speak the truth, and then, you know, get past the gaslighting or past the labels of mental illness or anything like that that wants to silence you, and say, no, I know my truth and I'm going to speak it, is so powerful. And you put that in this bigger context, that's powerful. So
yeah, I think, you know, just because you literally sort of use those words, that is exactly what The Woman They Could Not Silence is about. You know, a woman who, she's Elizabeth Packard, a housewife from the 1860s, Illinois, and she's sent to an insane asylum just because her husband disagrees with her. And she knows that she's sane, but every doctor, every lawyer, the law itself is against her. It says that he can dispatch her to a mental hospital and literally throw away the key. That is legal in those days. And it's about how, you know, she has the courage to own her truth, as you put it, to know that she is not insane, and to manage to rise above it and, you know, endure. That's what the whole story is about, you know, as you say, disregarding those labels that people can put on us and pushing against those barriers and boundaries that people try to put around us, to stand strong, you know, with your own roots in the earth, you know, just taking strength from yourself and your faith in yourself, and staying strong.
And I just want to let you know that I have mentioned to a lot of different types of people about that book, And, you know, when I kind of give the short story, like it's a husband who put the woman in insane asylum, they're like, oh, it's patriarchal or women's rights or something like that. And I said, no, it's more than that. It's just a person speaking the truth and holding on to the truth, no matter what happened. Like the worst things happened to her, and she still found a way to hold on to herself.
Yeah.
And that could be anybody, anywhere, anytime,
That's
male
so
or female.
true.
And it really inspired me. So I have confidence that when people read it, they'll find more in it than just the surface story.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
The strength, the inner strength.
It's true. You know, I focused on her story, and she is a woman, so there are feminist angles to it. But you know, some of my research, you know, unfolded that, like in the 1960s, when all the civil rights, campaigning was happening, you know, they actually, you know, the powers that be rewrote how you diagnosed mental illness and schizophrenia in particular, so that they could use it against civil rights activists and lock up, you know, Black activists who were struggling to achieve equality. They said they were schizophrenic and they locked them up in mental hospitals. You know, so it's the same thing. It's trying to use, you know, it's the powers that be using mental illness to try to silence people.
But then with the Radium Girls, they didn't know their truth yet. They didn't know what was even happening to them.
No.
They're like, what is happening to us? And it's happening to all of us. And, you know, they kept blaming it on, well, it could be this or that, not putting it together that there's a common denominator.
Of our jobs. Yes. So Kate, are you writing any other books? Because we definitely want to read them when they come out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Definitely, I was going to ask that question.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking the question and for your enthusiasm. Yes, I am working on something new. It's still fairly early days. I spent last year doing a few research trips to America, so I'm far along in the sense I have gone to the places. I have had those moments of being, you know, the spine-tingling moments of being in the places where this story is. But I haven't yet done the hard slog of sitting down at my desk and going through the masses and masses and masses and masses of data and research and resources that I have brought back with me from America. So it's going to be several years until it's ready, but I know what it is. I'm not ready to reveal what it is yet, but it's living in my head and heart, and it's hopefully you guys will like it as and when
keep
it's
the four
ready.
Keep the four of us inside the back of your brain, so you're like, you've got to get to work on that.
Exactly.
We want to read it. That's right.
Yeah.
So I know you don't want to tell too much about it. Is another story of women empowerment, or?
Yeah, that's probably fair, and it's another American historical story as well. So it is set in the US. And if anyone is interested to find out more, you know, as and when information is available, it will be on my newsletter. So if anyone's interested, you can sign up at www.kate-moore.com. That's kate-moore.com. And I have a semi-regular newsletter that, as and when there's anything interesting to say, it will be in there.
And make sure you do the hyphen, because there's actually another Kate Moore who is also an author.
There is, yes. She writes Regency romances.
Yes, yeah. I think I accidentally put her stuff in last time I interviewed you. So yeah, the hyphen is important.
Afternoon, and you know, as I said in the conversation, I'm just hugely grateful that you read the book, and especially grateful that you now know the story of the Radium Girls, and you know, you're retelling it to friends, and you're keeping their memory alive in your heads and hearts, because that is honestly the most important thing.
Okay, well, yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. All right. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, guys.
Yes, you too.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
And to all of you that watched and will watch later.